We are going to make some chuck roast bites in a caramelized onion gravy with mashed potatoes, miso glazed carrots, and a cheddar and green onion sourdough loaf that we kind of prepped up. So we're going to get this out. We'll give it a nice score and get it baking up. Yeah. So this is the dough that I prepped up yesterday. So we'll do a nice kind of long expansions for across, and then do our little pretty, but it has some sharp cheddar cheese in here, some fresh green onions, and then a little bit of garlic salt. So just a simple, cheesy onion loaf. I'm gonna pop it in my Dutch oven here, and we are going to bake it at 500 degrees for 20 minutes, and then we'll take the lid off and we'll bake it for another 20 minutes at 450 degrees. Slide that guy right over here. Slide it in my oven. Okay. And there we go. So at 51, we'll take it out, take the lid off, and we'll get that going. Let's get our potatoes ready for our mashed potatoes on there. We're just going to do a simple kind of creamy russet mashed potatoes, which are my favorite. I find that russets are really lovely for mashed potatoes because they make a really light and fluffy one. So we're going to give these a quick peel. We'll dice them up, and then we'll get them boiling for it. And then we have some carrots, onions that we'll prep up for our caramelized carrots and onions. And then I've got this nice, it's about a, like 2.5 pound chuck roast that I got from the butcher box. And so we just got, tried a subscription to the butcher box to see how their proteins are. And, hopefully if they're good, it'll probably save me a little bit of money. And just testing it out, seeing how well it is. So this again is like a 2.5 pound chuck roast. I'm going to cube it up and do it in like chuck roast bites because that way I can really taste the quality of the meat. Stewing it, they all kind of taste the same there, but I like to see how it is kind of more cooked at a medium rare. Because I do like to do my chuck roasts at medium rare, like in little bites every now and then.
Rondi, since you're good.
Well, thank you, Rondi. We appreciate that. So get these guys. Luckily, our weather has not been freezing anymore, so my potatoes have been safe. We had that really cold flash where all the potatoes that I normally keep outside in the garage were like freezing. But back to the basics. Get these guys, all of them off. Now, with a russet potato, you definitely want to give them a peel. That skin does not like get tender or whatnot when you cook it up. It just really gets chewy and dry. So peel that. And with a red potato, a new potato, you can leave those skins on if you want. But the trade-off is while you can leave those skins on, those are much denser mashed potatoes because they're a bit more waxy. Okay. We've got those. Let's get our pile of tighter skins out of here. And we're going to just kind of cube these up and we'll get these boiling for that. I'm going to try to cut them all roughly the same size so that they'll cook up at around the same time. Because with russet potatoes, you kind of have to make sure that you don't overcook them because they kind of disintegrate to nothing. So I kind of making sure they're all around the same size means they'll cook up, fairly equally. And then we'll work on, I think we'll maybe do our chuck roast. We'll cube it up so we can start, let it do a little quick marinade on it. And then we'll get our carrots and onions prepped up. We're going to do a miso glazed carrot. So I'm going to make we'll saute the onions and carrots kind of similar to how I do my caramelized carrots and onions, but we'll add in some miso paste, a little bit of Japanese barbecue sauce with it, and some garlic. So it'll be really lovely, slightly different, but delicious. And yeah, nice little homey warm thing, because yesterday it was 70 degrees and now it's like 40 degrees outside. So it's cold weather again. We did get a little bit of playtime outside with the boys before it got too like cold and chilly, but it was still like you had that chill in the air on it. Not as nice as yesterday. And Jack, of course, was like, I don't want to play with shoes on. And I was just like, you have to wear shoes. It's 50 degrees. You have to wear shoes if you want to be outside. Because, you know, in the summer, a lot of times in the summer, we'll just go barefoot outside, but not when it's cold. I'm going to slide my potatoes in here and we'll get them going. I'm going to dump off a little bit of this water so I can get that kind of starchy liquid off the top and there. There we go. Get that cooking up. I'm going to give it a good stir so none of those potatoes stick to the bottom. Okay, we'll let those boil up. And before we prep up our carrots, let's get our meat here. So I'm really excited about this because I'm hoping that this will turn out to be a good way to save a few bucks at least, or at least get some, you know, nicer quality meat on here. So we've got a good chuck roast here, and I'm going to kind of cut it into nice bite-sized pieces. If I see any big chunks of fat, I'm going to just trim it off. This one seems to have fairly good marbling in it. So it's only if it's a really big chunk of fat that I'll cut it off. So this middle piece right here. On it. And, you know, most people, they'll just do a chuck roast in like soups or, you know, roasting it up. But I found that if you just cube it up and then you do like a pan sear on it to where like it's a nice medium rare, it is wonderful. And my kids really like it. It's just a different way to do it. It has some great flavor to it. It's really tender and delicious. So we're just going to do some nice kind of, you know, bigger chunks, like almost like a 1 inch by a 1 inch kind of cube on there. That way it's like almost like a steak bite. And get it. I will say if you do a lot of meat prep, I would recommend getting a cleaver. It makes cutting roasts especially a lot easier. You know, when you have thinner cuts of meat, that's not so much of an issue, but with a roast, when you're kind of cube it up, it can be a bit tricky, but I do, with a cleaver, it really does make a difference. Get here. So again, just some good size cubes here. We're going to go through and kind of cut it down. This one is a fairly good one. So far I'm loving, like, there's some marbling in it, but there's not huge pieces of fat. And sometimes I've been getting like chuck roast with just big chunks of fat in it, which is not very good for when cooking it like this way. It's fine when you roast it off and it reduces down, but when you're cubing it, it doesn't work as well. So the texture of it feels nice, you know. I always like to try out new things and see, you know, is it really worth your money? Is it good? Is it a deal? You know, I feel like now there's out there, you just never know. So many things. It's hard to get an honest review of anything. Here we go. And we'll get these final little cubes. You know, the best way to get an honest review is ask your children. They'll tell me whether they like something or they don't like it, and they're never polite.
You have a question. Where did you say you got the roast?
So from Butcher Block. So it's a butcher. Yeah, I for some reason cannot say this. I have said this 100 times because all I can think about is countertops. Butcher Box. So it's a meat subscription service or whatnot where I don't know, I guess you have to sign up for a subscription. You can just purchase on there, but they deliver it to your house in a big box. So butcher box. And so I'm been kind of interested to try it out. I know my brother-in-law used it a while back and he said he liked it. And they had here and they were having like a good like free steaks with it. And I was like, I will take a free steak, and the prices, I was looking at the prices because that's the biggest thing is you want to compare what you're already paying with proteins for the month and whatnot. And I was looking at it and I was like, you know what? Depending on which proteins I selected, I'm like, I think I could actually end up saving some money each month with hopefully some higher quality proteins. So we're trying it out and hopefully this is a success. Now, you got to try it and taste it and make sure it is good because it comes to you kind of frozen on there, but it looks like it's been frozen well. It's stored on dry ice when it ships, so it doesn't have like freezer burn or anything like that. It looks great. I just de-thawed it. I started in the fridge and then I finished up on the counter. So I'm hoping.
Do you have a cookbook?
I'm in the process of making a cookbook. So I'm hoping at the end of March that it will be done and ready to go out there. So I just got to buckle down. But, I have a lot of travel dates coming up for my daughter's soccer, and those are always kind of good things to get going on in the hotel rooms and whatnot when you don't have much else to do. So I know I'll be able to buckle down and get a lot done. I'm going to put a little bit of Worcestershire sauce over my chuck roast here, my little cube bites. That's going to help break down the natural fat in it and keep these pieces nice and juicy. We're going to use a little bit of onion powder. Nice little sprinkle over. I'm going to do a good amount because we'll just toss everything, but you want about a tablespoon or so, maybe a little bit more, enough to make a really lovely dusting. We're going to use some herb de Provence, and mainly I'm using some similar seasonings that I used on my chuck roast the other day because I am trying to compare the texture and the flavors with it. So I want to have a very close approximation to it. So a little bit of herbs de Provence, which is like a French seasoning, a little black pepper, and then a little garlic salt. So pretty simple. We'll sprinkle it over. I'm going to grab some tongs. We'll give everything a nice little toss in it, but we won't sear this off until closer to the end because we want it to really kind of marinate a little bit, but we want to serve it pretty hot. So we'll sear it off at the end and then we'll make a nice gravy from the drippings. But we'll get this a nice little toss. That way they can all be kind of coated up in those bits. But I will say, if you haven't tried using a chuck roast this way, it is lovely. It kind of gives you the feel that you're eating a nice steak or whatnot, like a steak bite, but not nearly as expensive. And, it's a very tender piece of meat, as long as you don't overcook it. Here we go. So we're going to let those sit there and let them kind of just marinate in those little spices until we're ready to saute them off. Let's prep up our onions now and get ready for our carrots. I'm going to use one onion with my carrots now, and then we're going to save 2 onions for our caramelized onion gravy. I'm going to use my big one for this one. We'll get these kind of caramelizing up.
You get this question a lot. What's your family's favorite meal that you make?
Probably my ravioli. So my family really, really loves ravioli and my homemade like meat and cheese filling that I make with it. So that's probably their favorite, collectively. Although, steak is a very, very high one. They all love steak or scallops. They all have I feel like their favorite meals are very expensive bougie taste. Except Evie. Evie's great. She loves like spaghetti and meatballs and garlic bread or a variation of garlic bread, and she's like the happiest kid. But then she's also like the most picky in that she doesn't like anything else. We've got our onions here. I'm just going to turn my potato water down just a smidge since we got a pretty good boil. I'm going to give this a nice stir. Check on those in a little bit. Let's get our onions starting to, or let's get our carrots prepped up, and then we'll get our onions starting to caramelize here in just a second. Ooh, almost lost that. So I've got several carrots. I've got some orange, and then I'm 3 yellow, and it looks like 1 white. We're going to peel off the outsides, and then we will kind of cut them into like smaller type of, like almost like a julienne style. Nice little kind of carrot stick bases so that they can saute up nicely, get tender, but still keep a little bit of firmness. I don't want mushy carrots. And you could use baby carrots. If you don't want to do a lot of carrot prep, you can get, which is even better than baby carrots, because if you use baby carrots for this, you're going to want to kind of cut them in half. But in the like fresh produce section where you buy the carrots, they actually have these carrots that are called, they're like baby carrots, but they're microwavable baby carrots. And they're even smaller than baby carrots. And they work wonderful for this because they're just really tiny and they cook up well. You don't have to do any extra prep. That, of course, you then pay for that. That's the offside. If you want the convenience, you have to pay a little bit more, or you can do a little extra work and save a couple pennies. Yeah. So this is our 1 white one. I was like, I know I have a white one in there.
Oh, Brenda sent you a gift.
Well, thank you, Brenda.
Bubble wand.
Jack would be very, very, very happy with the bubble wands. We have, every time we like go to like, Dollywood, Anarchista, any type of one of those like amusement park things, we always somehow get, end up with a bubble wand of some sort. It's actually usually 2 because, if you get one with the little boys, you end up having to get the other. And sometimes it's just easier to like be like, you do that because you're not going to enjoy as much of the rides as the older kids are. So that's kind of their little special thing that they get. And I keep them because then I can just refill them and we use them at home until like their battery runs out. And Jack sometimes will just sit there and demand these bubble wands. And I'm like, the batteries, we like siphoned off the batteries for another toy on something and I haven't replaced them. And he just is like, I want these bubble wands. They're right there, Mama. I see them. You need to give them to me. And I'm like, there's no bubbles in them. There's no batteries. They don't work. And he'll just go crazy, and you give it to him, and then he's mad that it doesn't work. And I was like, I tried to tell you.
Do the different carrots taste the same?
They do. I will say that the orange is the sweetest of the carrots, which is why it's the most popular carrot. But the yellow and the like the white and the purple, they're pretty much the same. Like in a blind taste test, you would just say, they're carrots. They're all carrots. You wouldn't be like, this is, mind breaking. But yeah, there's a slight difference, but nothing that's like to write home about, I will say. It's like on one of those, what is it? I've seen on those like cooking game shows where they blindfold, and they have to like guess what the food is. You would not be like, this is a purple carrot. You would be like, this is a carrot. Although I'm sure somebody out there would. It would probably, it's really funny. So I have a pretty good palate and, I'm really good. We actually, back in our younger years, my husband and I used to do that. We used to like grab food out of our pantry and we'd blind it, wouldn't know. We'd have to guess what it was. And one of us was really good at it. And one of us was not very good at the game. I'll let you take a guess as who was good at it and who wasn't. But we have noticed that my 14-year-old son has a really, really good palate. Like he can taste those like aromatic notes. Like if you get the bougie chocolates that like it has a hint of this in it or whatnot, he'll be like, oh, I get this like citrusy hint to it. And I'm like, what? And then sure enough, there'll be like orange in it, or he's like guessed a lot of crazy things that we're all like, what are you talking about? And then we like go and read it, and sure enough, it's in there. He is very, very big, like discerning taste. He's the one who I will not tell him if I've done anything different on there. Okay. For it, because if I do tell it, like I'm always like, it's this, but he's like, you made it different, mama, and I know what it is. He's like, you did this and this, and I'm like, yeah, I did do something different. You're right, but I don't like to tell him because then he'll come in with preconceived thoughts. But he can always tell when something is. He's my kiddo who he doesn't necessarily love sourdough bread. And so if anytime I make something with sourdough discard and I try to tell him it's not in it, he's like, I know it's in it, mama. I can taste it. And I was like, it's still delicious. It's you. Trust me on it. Let me grab a fork. We're going to check my potatoes, see how they are, and then we'll grab our sourdough out here in about a minute. I'm going to grab my biggest chunk of potato, and if my fork can go through effortlessly like that, that means they are ready. So before I strain them, I'm actually going to reserve some of this starchy potato water to make our gravy later. So I'm just going to use this not really good ladle to ladle it up. It's a spoon, but it will work. And then we'll strain the potatoes. I'll put some butter in there to let them sit, and then we'll grab that sourdough out. And then we can get our carrots cooking and our roast starting to saute. I'm going to reserve about 2 cups for our gravy, and we'll mix a little bit of beef bouillon in this in just a second. So let me strain the rest of these potatoes, and then we'll grab that sourdough out. Take the lid off and kind of cook it at 450. He was like, I was talking about how, Torn has this really good taste, discerning taste. He even knows if I use a different potato in my mashed potatoes. Like, he'll be like, this isn't the same mashed potatoes. You did something. And I'll have peeled them because they don't like the skin on it. But he'll sit there and he'll be like, these are not russets. And I'm like, you're right. I used a new potato or a Yukon potato, something. He can tell. Here we go. Let me turn off my stove real quick. We're going to take our lid off of my Dutch oven here. That's my sourdough. It's the cheddar cheese and the green onion. We baked it for 20 minutes at 500. We're going to now bake it for 20 minutes at 450. And then dinner should be ready right about then. For this, I hand grated my cheese in there, and I used a really fine grater for it because I do not love super big chunks of cheese in my sourdough bread. I don't feel like they mess with the texture sometimes, so a nice, really fine grating I think works even better. So we've got that in there. 20 minutes, we'll know that that is ready. I'm going to put my butter in my potatoes, and we're going to let it sit and melt before we whip it up, because you don't want to melt cold or whip cold butter into your potatoes because they won't be as fluffy. So I'm going to put that in there. We'll let it melt. And the same thing with our cream. We're going to let that warm up in our pan.
Yeah, question. Is your other oven broken?
It is broken. It will hopefully be fixed Friday. During the ice storm when they were restoring power to everything, we didn't lose power, but I guess we had some electrical surges where we got too much power coming in. And we think that's what blew it, because we lost a bunch of light bulbs in our house that day too. And it's kind of a big coincidence to lose like 6 or 7 lights to go and burn out as well as that. So we think we just got a influx of energy in, I guess. And that's kind of what caused it to go out. So hopefully it's not just a fuse and we can get it fixed up on Friday. They had to order the part, but it was one of those things where we'll get the fuse, but we won't know if there's anything else broken until we've got that component fixed. So fingers crossed that it's just that, because it's a pretty new wall oven. It's the same age as Jack, I'll tell you that, because that was when we were doing our reno, and I remember I had the lofty goal of I'm going to order it so that in my mind, our kitchen was going to be done before I had Jack, because that was the original estimate from the contractor. But now I have realized that, contractors, they really don't mean it when they say when their time frame of when something's going to be done. And they're like, we can definitely get it done before you give birth. That was not it. We added in our onions here for our caramelized carrots and onions. And then we're going to do a miso glaze on them, which will be lovely. So I'm just going to kind of let them caramelize up here. We'll get that going. I'm going to start heating up and cooking off our, getting our oil hot to cook off our meat chunks, because we're going to have to do this probably in 2, maybe 3 batches. There's my oil. We'll sear them off. I'll remove them out. Then we're going to make a gravy from the drippings, and then we'll put them back in. So more like a demi-glaze kind of than a gravy, because it's going to be a caramelized onion with a little bit of beef bouillon. We'll get this. I'm going to do about a tablespoon and a half. We're going to let our pan get nice and hot before we sear off that meat, because we want to cook this meat at a nice medium rare, which means I want it to be seared off on both sides with that pink in there. It's going to continue to rest outside just like you would a steak. So you want that resting, and then we'll kind of put it back with that nice, wonderful flavored taste to it. While we're waiting, this is our starchy potato water. I'm going to mix in our beef bouillon into that so that it can dissolve and be used for our gravy. And we've got two cups here, so we'll just do like a light spoonful. And we'll let it dissolve. The starchy water from the potatoes will also help thicken up the gravy on there. It's just a great way to reuse water so you're not wasting, but it's the starchy water works. You could definitely just use hot water as well. Okay, let's get our garlic minced up on here so that we can throw some of this in with our onions. We'll get our carrots in there, and then we'll make our glaze. We don't want to start our glaze too early with the carrots because it has some sugar in it, and you don't want it to turn to a candy first. So let's get this up. Yep, slide that over there. And once our onions have a nice little kind of golden brown color to them, that's when we'll drop our carrots in there. And then I'll put my lid on, and we'll let them kind of steam cook for just a little bit with that lid on, which is their natural, liquid on there, so they remain a nice kind of crispness. And then we'll do our glaze at the very end. And nice little mince here. Now I'm going to do mine kind of small, but you can, if you can leave it bigger chunks on there. You'll get that nice big kind of garlic flavor with it. With fresh garlic, it's much more mellow in flavor than garlic, which is a bit more acidic. So it is much nicer to eat fresh. It's actually one of my favorite things, fresh. Cooked, but fresh. Let's give those onions a quick stir. Here we go. We're starting to get a little bit of a golden color to it. Oh, man overboard. Get a nice toss. And I have these cooking over, just like a medium high, so right around a 6, not too high. I want a good caramelization, but once we get our carrots in, I'll turn it down to about a 5. Enough to activate those natural sugars, get a little saute on them, but I don't want them to burn. And let's get our garlic in there. We'll let our garlic saute for about 1 minute before we add in our carrots. I'm just going to use half of it because we're going to reserve some of that garlic for our onion gravy, our onion demi-glaze, how you want to call it. There we go. That feels sufficiently hot. You don't ever want to drop your meat chunks in cold oil or room temperature oil. You want it to be nice and hot so it gets a good sear. I'm going to turn it down to about a 7, so it's not the full extent, but we'll get a great sear on it. And then I'm just going to make sure that each piece has its own spot on the pan so that it can get a great sear. Break these two apart. There we go. Don't crowd them because you want, again, I want these to cook up to a nice medium rare with a lovely pink in the middle. If you just dump your meat in here, the problem with that is you will, it will cool your pan down, and instead of getting a great sear on your meat, it's going to cause the juices in your meat to just seize out. Your meat will get chewy, you won't get a great sear, and this won't be as nice and lovely. And I like to kind of fill up my periphery of my pan first before I do my inner, because my base, the very center of my pan, is my hottest part of my pan. So that's typically my last chunk of meat that I put on there. Now we're going to cook these kind of a medium rare, just 3 to 4, because they are going to sit and rest on a plate and continue cooking just like you do with a steak, where you let it rest. You don't want it to overcook it, because it does need that sit, and then we will toss it with our onion demi-glaze at the end. Get our carrots in here. And we'll give these a nice toss, and then I'm going to put the lid on them and let them kind of coat up and steam up with the lid with that natural thing. But I do want to get them kind of twisted in that onion and garlic, and I'm going to turn my heat down to about a 4 so that it can steam up without burning the onions or the carrots or garlic. Let me grab my lid here. And we'll let those steam. I'm going to give my pan a rotation here, and we'll flip these in just a little bit. While we're doing that, we're going to do our first whip on our mashed potatoes. Now that our butter, as I can see, it's almost completely melted here, and we'll whip it. The nice thing about cooking our mashed potatoes in a metal pan like this is I can whip it straight up in the metal pan, which means I don't have to get a bowl out or anything like that. If you are using a non-stick pan, do not whip it up in there or you will ruin your pan. And add in a little bit of salt, and we'll get our first whip. Again, really important to make sure your cream and your butter has a chance to melt and warm up before you whip it to get a lighter, fluffier mashed potato. Also, if you ever have problems with getting a lump in your mashed potato, that means you didn't cook all of your potato all the way through. So when I was boiling them and I showed you how I found my largest potato and I pressed my fork through it, as long as you do that, then you'll know that they are cooked all the way through and you won't get lumpy mashed potatoes. We're going to do our first whip here. We're going to let it sit. I'll add in a bit more cream in a little bit, and we'll whip it up for its final whip on there. But I always like to do it in stages so that it can get a chance to kind of that butter and that cream adhere to everything. We're going to flip these guys over. You can see we have this nice little sear on it forming. Beautiful. And flip over for each one. And we'll get that. Perfect. With these guys. And get this last one flipped over. There we go. So we've got our little pieces of meat here. This side will cook a little bit faster than the other ones, but these are pretty good sized chunks, a little bit bigger than when I make a soup or a stew. So they need a little bit longer. Again, you still want them to have a little bit of reddish pink in the middle because they will sit and continue to cook, and you want them to be a nice medium rare. While those are kind of cooking up here, I'm going to prep up our onions for our kind of onion demi-glaze sauce that we will be making. I'm going to use 2 onions for this. That will bring in some really great flavor because we'll caramelize them up in our pan dripping. And then we'll make, of course, a little bit of a roux and use some of our starchy potato water with our beef bouillon. For this, I'm going to do nice, long, skinny pieces of onion. That way they'll just be lovely in it.
I got a question. Does sirloin tip roast cook up similar to chuck?
Somewhat. Sirloin is a much leaner roast, so you can get it to cook up well. It's can be a bit more tougher if you overcook it on there. So it has some similarities. For this, you could actually it would work well for this dish. Okay. I'll do a nice quick toss around. And then I'm going to let them take them out and we'll let them sit. And again, knowing that these are all going to drop back in to our base at the very end. But these will continue to cook. Not all of them. I'm going to tell him he needs to let them wait for at least 5 minutes before he eats them. We'll see if he can follow directions. He's not very good at following directions. They should have a nice little bit of pink in the middle, which will continue to cook through as they sit and rest because they are still, as you can see, steaming hot. It's just like with a steak. I'm going to have to pull that away from you. But with a steak, you let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes after you take it off the grill to let those juices sit and let it kind of finish the cooking. Same thing with your Thanksgiving turkey. Very important. That way your meat doesn't dry out. Get these last little bits on here. Yeah. And again, try not to crowd your pan. Make sure you have space in there, a little bit of space between each piece so that it has a chance to get its own spot on the bottom of your pan. It's like a dance floor. Yeah. And I'm just gonna slide it over because I've got like 3 pieces left, and I'm gonna make it work. When I say 3, I mean 4. There we go. We'll let those kind of sear off. Let's pour in a little bit of cream right here with our mashed potatoes. I always never know exactly how much cream I'm going to put into it until I start whipping because you just don't know exactly how starchy each potato is going to be on there and how much they'll take in. So, but I know what my inconsistency looks like. And that's why I always say with cooking, a lot of it is about feel and look versus exact measurements. Baking is more of a science where exact measurements matter because you have that organic kind of chemical reaction. But cooking is a lot more about feel. So just trust your instincts, trust what you taste, and you'll get there. There we go. Let's whip it up a few on the very top setting to get that nice whipped mashed potatoes. Took my little beaters out too soon, but nice kind of simple basic mashed potato here with the butter and the cream, which makes it just wonderful. I always say mashed potatoes are not a diet food, so if you're going to make them right. Hasn't been 5 minutes. He's trying to steal his meat.
What type of cream for the mashed potatoes?
Heavy whipping cream is my preferred because it gives it a richer base for it. You don't need as much, for it, but I think it just makes the flavor a little bit nicer. It makes it less gritty. It makes it smoother. Got ours kind of cooked here. We've got some our carrots. As you can see, they've got a little more bend in them, so they're starting to get more tender. We'll let them steam up for just a little bit more, and then we're going to make our little miso glaze for them. Looks like our steak bites here are just about ready to flip over on some of these. So I'm going to get in here. See this lovely sear that we have on them. Again, you want to cook these off on a high temperature and sear it through. But again, be careful not to overcook it. You want a nice medium rare. And they don't take long because they're smaller pieces of meat. And then we'll use these drippings in this pan to make a lovely onion demi-glaze. Yeah. Flip all of them over. We'll let them have a little time on the side. And I always say for like doing like a steak bite or a meat chunk like this, 1 inch by 1 inch cubes are like the best. You don't want to go too small because if they're small, then they'll cook too fast and they won't be as nice for it. Let's steal this away from the cameraman. I was going to have to remember he's getting less at dinner. Give this a nice little stir. We'll mix that in. Again, this is our starchy potato water, which will help thicken it up with a nice scoop of beef bouillon in it, which we'll use for that demi-glaze. Okay, give these a quick little stir around in those little meat drippings. And then we'll start taking them out. And then we'll grab our sourdough out here. Yep, in 1 minute, I think we have left on there. Again, you want these to have a nice, if you were to cut into them, it'd be like a pinkish red, and then it would settle to a lovely pink by the time it's done resting. Nice and tender, medium rare. Okay. And now I'm going to turn the temperature of my pan down to about a 4, and we're going to drop these onions in, and then we'll get our sourdough out. I'm going to get my onions in here, and then we're going to put a little bit of butter with them to make this demi-glaze as well. So let's get those onions in. Kind of give them a nice little bit up. They'll kind of pick up on some of those little bits in there. And then let me grab a little bit of butter. And then we'll grab this sourdough out. There we go. Where's my little, there they are. I'm going to slide this guy right over here. These guys over here. And then we'll finish up our carrots, finish up our gravy, and then it'll be time to eat.
How long does sourdough last before you have to use it?
In the fridge, or like if it's proofing, like 3 days proofing, I find that it's like best within 3 days outside after you bake it up on here. So this is our, turn my alligator around, my cheddar cheese and green onions with a little bit of garlic salt on in it. If I grab it, where does it have to go in there with this? My parchment paper falling apart today, guys. There we go. But look at this beautiful base, nice kind of golden brown. We've got I did a nice finely grated cheddar cheese in there so that you have that cheese melt in, but it's not going to weigh it down and make it very heavy on there. You can see we have this lovely, how much it popped when we did our expansion score right down the middle on there. And you can see the little bits of green onion. It's going to be absolutely delicious for it. I will say right now our biggest thing is our sourdoughs aren't lasting very long. They're getting eaten up by like the next day. And it's because I decided to start making smaller loaves and try to do more often. But that kind of means that we're eating too much and we're not getting enough for our grilled cheeses the next day, which we really love. So I'm not sure what we're going to have to do. I think I'm going to have to start making some bigger loaves too, because I've been missing my grilled cheeses with my soups. And it's because we all just really love sourdough, and my parents really love sourdough. It's just so good. We've got our onions here. Let's finish up our carrots too. So I'm going to take this off. We've got a good base steam on here now. We're going to make our miso glaze. I've got some miso paste here. Let me grab a little spoon. We're going to add in just about a tablespoon of miso paste.
Get it. Question, do your parents live with you?
They don't live with me. Sometimes it feels like they do, but they just live right down the road, like 3 miles down the road. So I started cooking all their meals for them when I was in middle school. And I think they got like a small break when I went off to college. And I think the first couple of years of, my grad school. And now I'm back to cooking all of their meals for them again. So I think they lucked out. I will say, when I was in middle school, high school, they fostered my love for cooking. They got me subscriptions to the Gourmet magazine and the Fine Cooking magazine, and I really, really loved it. And I think they benefited it.
What if you don't have miso paste?
So you could easily just do this with, just Japanese barbecue sauce. The miso paste gives you a little bit more of that, savory mommy flavor to it, but it's not a necessity. I do find that miso paste, while, 10 years ago was impossible to find, I can now get it at my local grocery store. I can get it on Amazon too. So it's one of those things where they have it in like the international section on my grocery store. So it is easier to come by. And I use it in a lot of different things. But it has a nice thing, but you don't have to use it. You could just sub out and just use a little bit of this and use a little bit of ginger and have a slightly different flavoring to it. We're going to add in a little bit of brown sugar, add a nice little bit of sweetness to it, because again, it gives you that sweet and savory. And then you have that Japanese barbecue sauce that gives you also that kind of sweet and savory with it. But very simple and delicious. So we'll let those just simmer up right here. Let's get this done so we can get our meat bites in there and be all ready. We've got our onions here kind of caramelizing up, and those meat drippings. I'm going to add in my garlic in just a second. Just want to make sure I stir around. You want to scrape off the bottom of your pan. Make sure you get any of those drippings off, those spices. Got our fresh garlic going in. I'll mix this around. And we're going to let this saute for just about a minute or so. Let that garlic have a chance to heat up. And then we're going to add in our beef bouillon with our starchy potato water. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of flour over this to help it thicken up just a little bit too. But we'll let that hit that. And let me see, let me grab a little bit of flour. That one's empty. Let me grab my big tub. I normally have a little dish out, but let me grab my big tub over here. Got to remember to refill. This will just allow it to thicken up a little bit. We have that potato water that will help with the starches, but we're essentially making like a roux with the little drippings of butter in here, but with our caramelized onions in there as well. So we'll sprinkle a little bit of that over. You don't need a whole lot to kind of get that base for it going. We're going to let them kind of coat up here. Yeah. Going to make a nice kind of little paste over it. Yeah. And I think I'll sprinkle just a smidge more. I'm looking for making sure that I don't see too much moisture on them, but more of like a little paste. So you're just going to add enough to get that kind of paste to form.
You have a question? Is that cornstarch?
This is flour. You could definitely use cornstarch, but if I was going to use cornstarch, I'd do it slightly different. I would actually mix some cornstarch into my beef or bouillon here and then kind of do it like a slurry. So slightly different texture, but it allows it to mix a little bit nicer if you needed to do it like a gluten-free version of it. Now we're going to add this in little by little. Make sure you scrape the bottom of your pan as you do it. You want to bring up those nice kind of flavors, make this nice little demi-glaze here using that starchy potato water, this caramelized onions. Give it a good chance to thicken up here. And then I have a little thing that I love to use that gives a nice savory flavor, but also improves the color of this. It's called Kitchen Bouquet. It's like, I feel like it's from the 70s, but it's something we had growing up. You need just about a teaspoon in there. As soon as I mix it, it's going to change the color into a very rich, it's just made from roasted vegetables, but it is like a secret to your gravy that really can enhance the flavor. And not to be confused with a bouquet of flowers. Let's get this added up. And then I'm going to give it a quick taste. I think we're pretty much right at the consistency. But essentially we have this lovely kind of onion gravy that we'll be able to put our meat chunks on that will kind of soak up and kind of flavor. And they'll be ready to eat.
Toya made your minestrone soup tonight and said it was delicious.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm always so happy to hear when somebody has made one of my recipes and they love it, because that just makes me happy. Because, you know, we all have different tastes and we might like different things, but it's nice to hear when somebody likes it and they were successful.
And a couple questions. Where can you find the Kitchen Bouquet?
This is found in like your condiments aisle. So I'm at Publix, they have it there. There's like the Gravy Master and then like Liquid Smoke and all that. It's just right there, kind of with all of them. Let's grab this last little bit in here. There we go. See if we want to add anything else. I think I'll add just a little bit of garlic salt and a little bit of pepper, and then we are golden. And we'll give this a good mix. And this will be great over our mashed potatoes as well. Okay, let's give this a good stir real quick.
And then can you go over everything that's in there?
Yes. So, I have a little tickle here. We caramelized up our onions and our garlic and our meat drippings, and then we added a little bit of flour, and then we used our starchy water from our potatoes to make a gravy with a little bit of beef bouillon in it. For some reason, I gotta get another drink here. I'm about to sneeze, I think. Okay. Better, much better. Let's just put this in here. We're just going to drop these right on top. Make sure you put all of your little meat drippings and juices in here as well from this. And this will add a nice kind of savory onion flavor to our meat bits that will just things and kind of keeps everything nice and hot. Beautiful.
Is the taste similar to an au jus?
Not exactly. It's more of like an onion gravy. So an au jus is like a meat juice, and this is going to have a very strong caramelized onion. Think about a French onion soup in a sense, but a very rich one almost in it. Let's get ready to serve up this, guys. Let me give my little things a little toss right here. But it's lovely because it not only will be fabulous with the meat, add that wonderful onion and garlic flavor to it, but it's going to be great on the mashed potatoes to make a lovely gravy for that, because my oldest daughter, I make mashed potatoes and I don't have gravy. It's a very, very sad day for her. Let me grab my sourdough. Bring this guy right over here. And do checkmate to the kitchen bouquet. Oh, and let me grab the scoop for that, and then we should be about ready. Serve these guys up here. Okay, we've got our nice thing. I feel like we've had it. It's been about, I think, 5-10 minutes. We should be good. Okay, we're gonna cut in here. We'll get a nice little slice of our green onion and cheddar sourdough bread with this. Look at that. You can see that cheese swirl all the way through because we put the cheese and the green onions during the lamination process. Very lovely.
D-Mac sent you again.
Well, thank you, D-Mac. We appreciate that. Here we go. Beautiful. So lovely. We're going to put that on there. So that is our sourdough bread with green onions and cheddar cheese and garlic salt throughout the process. We did the lamination thing. We're going to serve that with our creamy mashed potatoes. We're going to make a nice little bed of this because I'm going to serve my meat chunks on there, my chuck roast chunks, and the onion gravy on top of that. So it just adds this wonderful, rich, and delicious kind of gravy to there, and those fabulous chuck roast chunks. Amazing. And then we have our miso glazed carrots and onions as a nice little savory but sweet side with these. Let me pop in a couple more of them for a really delicious and amazing dinner. Whipped up in no time, guys. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. We've got our chuck roast bites with our onion gravy, mashed potatoes, and miso glazed carrots. And you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my hex clad pans, my all clad pans, my knives, cutting boards, all the different things that I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and